friends, I'm back with some tips on how to start a D&D campaign. Now, this video isn't about what you might need, like friends, character sheets, a bingo card full of war crimes, dice, and a number 2 pencil. It also isn't about your session 0, I've already done a video on that, and you should check it out if you haven't already. No, this video is about the narrative opening of your campaign. Where and how do the characters meet? What will the characters learn, and where should they go from there? What NPCs are present, and what role do they serve? All of these questions are important to consider when beginning a long-form campaign. The answers that you have to these questions will set the stage for what the players focus on over the course of your game, communicating intention and acting as roadmaps for your players to follow. If you don't have the answers, you're setting yourself up for a campaign of herding kittens. This video is going to be broken into 4 sections. First, I want to talk about the cliche campaign openings and why they're so popular. These tried and true methods might earn you an eye roll on the internet, but they're used frequently for a reason, and I want to point out what makes them so handy. Second, I have a few non-traditional campaign beginnings that I think are fun and I want to share with you. After that, I'm going to boil it all down to a few simple objectives that you should have when creating your opening setting, whether it's traditional or not. Lastly, I have a few thoughts on how you should open a one-shot or a limited adventure, which is obviously very different from an extended story. Let's get started. First, the cliche openings. Let's talk about some of the classics and their similarities, noting why they've become so popular and what lessons we can take from them. You start in a tavern. Okay, so I know the internet hates this trope, and frankly, I don't know why. People roll their eyes at it, bash it as unoriginal, say it's overused, but it's a fantastic way to start a campaign. A somewhat lesser-known twin of this opening is starting at a carnival or a festival or some similar event. Or you could say that everyone is part of the same caravan, traveling from A to B on the map. These might all be very different scenarios, but the purpose of them is the same. You're putting your player characters in situations where they're more likely to interact with strangers, such as other members of the eventual party. Perhaps the tavern is crowded and they all end up sitting at the same table. Or maybe they all find themselves watching the same magician's show at the carnival. Or after setting up camp for the night in a caravan, they're all gathered around the same stew pot. Suddenly, these strangers are all much more likely to talk to each other than they would be if you told them that they were all in the line at the grocer's, or even if they were working the same job. The situations that are inherently social, that we associate with conversation amongst strangers, these invite the players to step into the vulnerability that is role-playing a character for the very first time. Which leads me to another reason why this opening is popular. It gives the players the chance to role-play. Believe me, I love a hot start, and we'll talk about those a little bit later. But that throws a player into the deep end of their character with little to no warning. Some people might thrive under that pressure, but most won't. A caravan, a tavern, a festival, all of these options allow your players the chance to dip their toes in before the adventure truly begins. That rogue who sits in the shadows, gloomy and edgy, watching everyone else from the corner, there's a good chance that player is just kind of shy and unsure of themselves and is waiting to be approached. What's great is that you, as the DM, have full control over when the action starts, allowing your players as little or as much time as they need to get into the mindset to have a comfortable and fun time. There's a myriad of reasons why these settings aren't great for an opening, but the last one I'm going to mention is this. They are home to all of the cops and robbers, weirdos, normies, native, immigrant, guys, gals, and non-binary pals that you could ask for. Every people, ideal, political leaning, friend and foe could be represented amongst its cohorts. This opening gives you the chance to say, here's an opinion on most everything that's going on in the surrounding area, and then go from there. Quick cons of these starts: it is easy to introduce way too much too fast, or, on the other side of it, you can let your players sort of talk themselves to death. You don't want to let the characters sit at the bar and tell each other every detail of their backstory for 3 hours and then call it a night. In the same way that you don't want to spend so much time describing the people and the games at the carnival that there isn't any leftover time to play. If you're going to start with one of these scenarios, and I highly recommend it, here are some tips. Keep track of your time, delegating equal portions of your session to introducing the player characters to each other, introducing the world and its people to them, and then action. Whether that's a bar fight, a cult stealing something from the festival celebration, horses running away from the caravan, whatever it is that's kicking off your first plot thread. Limit the number of NPCs that your party can interact with. That's not to say that you should tell them, okay, you can only talk to 2 more people and then you're done. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I think take the NPCs that you've prepared and break them down into a few categories. I like to think of 3 different ones. There's transactional, social, and plot. A transactional NPC is someone like a barkeep or someone in the corner with a card game. These interactions are typically short and limited. A social NPC may be someone like a bard sitting at the caravan's campfire, or a fortune teller who's joined the safety of the wagon train for the price of sharing her talents with others. These NPCs are fun to talk to and probably know a good deal about the world. Plot NPCs are people like the young girl who rushes into the bar to say that goblins kidnapped her baby brother. Or the mayor who, at the winter festival, for some reason can't seem to stop sweating, and insists that no, there is no cult, please stop asking about it, or else they'll kill me. Or maybe the old blind man that knows the secret of the ruins that the caravan has made camp in. These NPCs are catalysts for the story, typically pushing the player characters towards the adventure that the dungeon master has planned for. Now, one NPC can fill more than one of these roles, but when you're using the "you start in a tavern" opening, consider how many you want of each. I would suggest no more than 3 transactional NPCs, 2 social NPCs, and maybe just 1 plot giver. Let's look at another type of cliche opening, and what makes it worthwhile. That would be a variation of everyone in the eventual party being in the same jail or prison, or maybe everyone is a survivor of the same shipwreck. And often in these situations, it's possible that everyone has amnesia, but not always. These, again, might seem like different openings, but they share a focal point, and that's this. It takes each of the characters, who presumably have different backgrounds, personal attachments, vendettas, knowledge sets, but now they have a unified goal. This type of opening is popular because it immediately brings the party together for one purpose. Once that goal is accomplished, then it's much easier for the party to stay together. Another great tool that's often looked over from this opening is that it restricts the players to one area. They're all in the same prison and can't escape. They're all shipwrecked on the same island and have to wait for hope of rescue. Both of these scenarios give the players a limited amount of space to work with, which can make prep for the DM so much easier. While the tavern opening is great for inexperienced players, the stranded opening is perfect for a new DM. Give your players a small space for the first session or 2, and then when they've escaped, you can slowly build the world out from there. Similarly, these openings have little room for additional NPCs, so the start doesn't feel crowded and the DM doesn't have to worry about coming up with a bunch of extra characters. The prison might have a jailer or guards and a few other prisoners, but the interactions will be limited. A shipwreck might have some additional survivors, or maybe the island is inhabited by a foreign people, but neither of those are required. The tavern, festival, caravan opening gives plenty of NPCs to work with, and there's benefits to that, but a prison or a shipwreck or even an abduction can limit or totally eliminate the NPC population, which can definitely be helpful to new DMs. I think those two categories are the big cliches, and I think you should use them for your campaign. Don't listen to the haters on the internet if you feel drawn to either of these. They're popular for a reason. If you're attached to one of the ideas, but you don't want to use the setting for fear of a cliche, try changing it up just a little bit. Instead of meeting in a tavern, the players are at the magical fantasy equivalent of the DMV. Instead of being shipwrecked on an island, their airship crashes into a desolate mountain range. These are both aesthetically different, but follow all of the same structures. However you use a cliche, if you do them right, your players will have a good time, even if they've started in a similar way before. Now, if you're looking for something new and fresh, here are a few ideas that I've had. During your session 0, introduce an important NPC. For this example, I'll call them Matron Jasmine K. She's a lifelong spinster, but a staple of the community. She's a philanthropist, an activist. Rumor has it she runs the local thieves guild. She owns the most successful brothel and bar in the capital city. She funds the opera house. You get the idea. As a part of character creation, ask each of these players individually how they know the matron Jasmine K and why she's important to them. Figure out the details of each person's relationship with this NPC. Then, session 1 takes place at her funeral. Go from there. Did she die under mysterious circumstances? Who is set to inherit her business empire or her more notable possessions? What other important people attend the funeral or the wake held afterwards?
What's the wake? When you're not sleeping.
Okay, this one is sort of a cliche in other media, but I haven't heard of a D&D campaign starting this way before, so I'm going to pretend that it's a new, fresh idea that I just had. Do the hot start, where the first thing that you say at the table is something along the lines of, "You face the lich that you have hunted for so long. He who has torn your world apart and made a mockery of its shattered fragments. He looks at you with a cold glee, beginning the necrotic incantation of a spell." Roll for initiative. The assumption here is that your players have no idea what you're referencing. A lich? What? My world was shattered when? What am I? Where? Encourage them to work together in this fight and make sure that they share details of their characters' appearances, voices, movements, all of that stuff. It's important. Then, just as it seems all hope is lost, they wake up in their bed, safe and sound. The dream fades. It is the start of a normal day, and their world is fine. They don't even know what a lich is. Only half an hour or so of your session has passed. There's still plenty of time to play. Have them introduce their character and their morning routine one at a time, moving the scene from wherever they start their day to some location that you can encourage they all need to go to. A market or a shipyard, something like that. Once each character is there, going about their business, they begin to notice each other. People that are so familiar despite never meeting. They've only fought side by side in dreams. The next idea I just think is so much fun that I might have to do it myself. Session 1 takes place at a fancy party, which, let's be honest, isn't that different from starting in a tavern. But this time, instead of ales, there are martinis or champagne flutes passed around by waitstaff. There's still an abundance of NPCs to talk to, some transactional, some social, some plot. There's music and laughter and schmoozing and espionage. You've talked to your players beforehand about how they got an invite to this fancy event, if they did at all. Why are they here? What do they want out of it? As the event goes later into the night, each player character notices notable figures at the party descending down a flight of guarded stairs. They can work together or individually to find out what the password is if they want to discover the what's going on in the lower levels of the mansion. Or maybe they say the wrong thing to the right person and get passed a note with the password written on it. Or they're mistaken for someone else. However it happens, they descend the stairway, where they're unquestionably handed a dark robe and a black candle. They've stumbled ass backwards into a secret society ceremony like the characters in a Nick Frost and Simon Pegg film.
It's all about the greater good.
The greater good.
How can this be for the greater good?
The greater good.
What happens from here? Well, that's up to the DM. Maybe they're each found out because they don't bear the mark of the devoted. Or perhaps a power-hungry member of the cult has poisoned all of the other members of the Brotherhood upstairs. And as the poison starts to take effect, they start dropping like flies, leaving 4 clueless idiots between the betrayer and the magic item he seeks in the deceased leader's body. Or maybe the party witnesses the secret society summoning a demon, and you end session 1 on that. If you like any of those ideas, take it. It's yours. Let me know how it goes for you in the comments, or feel free to share any of your own ideas for a campaign opening. Okay, so we've been through some of the classic campaign starts and some of my original ideas. Now, let's look at what they all have in common. Think of these as objectives when planning your first session. You may not be able to accomplish all of these guidelines, but try to hit most of them. If you do that, I think you're setting yourself up for success. First would be my rule of thirds that I mentioned earlier. Break your session into 3 equal sections. You can do them one at a time, or mix it up with a little bit here, a little bit there, switching back and forth between purposes. But when it's all totaled up, your time playing between each should be about equal. The first section is the player characters introducing themselves to the world. How do they enter the setting? How are they dressed? Who do they interact with? How do they sound and look? This will be done one by each player, either interacting with the DM as NPCs in the setting, or themselves interacting with the other characters. The second session is you, the DM, introducing the world to them. This can be done through measured exposition, role-playing with NPCs, descriptions of the setting, playing carnival games, all stuff like this. The last section is action, which may include combat, but could also be stealth and athletics rolls while fleeing from an ancient dragon attacking the city, or a skill challenge to avoid traps in the tunnels that goblins have been digging under the village. I would categorize anything that includes rolling dice and playing with the mechanics of the game as action. By balancing these 3 sections, you've got an interesting and exciting start to an adventure that has now introduced its heroes, even if they don't know it yet. Tip number 2. By the end of session 1, you should have established a unifying cause between all of the party members. Something that is going to keep them working together, at least through the first arc of the campaign. From there, hopefully their characters have seen the benefit of adventuring together and want to continue. Maybe in the beginning of your first session, there's that loner character who doesn't want to rely on anyone, but by the end of your time at the table, that person should be on board for the ride. I always suggest highlighting the fact that this is a cooperative game in your session 0. That way, at least if a character is a lone wolf who doesn't like to get attached to others, their player knows that they're going to be part of a party. But as a DM, when the narrative starts, don't hesitate to tie all of the adventurers together with a unifying cause. That's why your friends are there. Third tip. Make sure to introduce characters that both complement and oppose the party's beliefs. This goes back to what I was saying about all of the characters that they could meet in a tavern or at a fair, whichever public setting you use. The entire spectrum of opinions on every important issue should be represented in this setting. Sure, a wide range of everyday people don't care about who rules the kingdom, as long as it doesn't change their crops or their taxes. The barkeep pouring drinks, and the barmaid taking dinner orders, and the tailor in the corner are ambivalent to international politics. But make sure that both extremes are represented as well. The bard sings praises to the good king's health, songs of his noble deeds and charitable spirit. Meanwhile, the shadowy man in the corner is a spy master for the would-be usurper who plots to take the throne by blood. I'm not saying that part of the action of this first session should be these two factions coming to blows, although that could happen if you wanted to. But the party should have the chance to hear from each side of the opinion spectrum, then establish their own views. My last tip, more than the others, is based on my own personal opinion and how I like to tell stories, so take it with a grain of salt. I'm sure some people won't agree with me or find it a feasible option, but I think that if you can, your first session should be tied to your last one, even if it's in some small way. Maybe it's subtle foreshadowing, or maybe they take place in the same location. Maybe the final boss is introduced in session 1. Whatever it is, the 2 episodes should be directly related to each other, even if there are going to be multiple arcs and countless sessions in between. 5 years ago, I started a virtual COVID campaign with some close friends from around the country. Where did their adventure begin? With all of them in prison and no memory of the last 2 years. Real original, right? I wasn't aware of the cliches at the time, and I thought I was being super clever. Over 4.5 years of playing, nearly weekly passed. We had exactly 200 sessions, and during that time, they fought vampires, werewolves, doppelgangers, giants, dungeons and dragons, nearly the entire monster manual, really. There were short story arcs and long ones and shenanigans and tears, and in their penultimate battle, they faced the one who had put them in the prison and erased their memories in the first place. I'm not going to spoil anything more because I've been promising you forever that I'm going to do a campaign recap, and guess what? I've started on it. We actually recorded, some of us, myself and all of the players that made it to the end of that campaign, we recorded us talking through the first arc, so now all I have to do is edit it, and it'll be up soon. But anyways, back to my point. The fact that the end of the campaign was so intensely tied to the beginning made it feel like everything that the party had done along the way led them to this specific confrontation. The weight of each die roll was palpable. Their emotional investment was so clear. It was exactly what I had been going for as a DM who had been loosely plotting the campaign for over 4 years. Think about your favorite epic stories and how their ends are tied to how they began. Now, find a way to do this with your campaign. I made this video as a way to give you some ideas on how to start an extended campaign, or permission to begin with a cliche if that's what you needed. So if you've wanted to do this for a while and you just needed that little push, I hope this helped. Especially if you've been telling your friend for years that he can guest star in your romantasy smut campaign, but you have yet to start any planning on it whatsoever. So now you don't have any excuses. Go on now, get! My last thing to say is about opening one-shots or limited adventures. These story structures are very different and usually require a more controlled narrative hand, sometimes called railroading, and thus they need a different style of opening. You can't give them a tavern to introduce themselves in, you need to move things along. You can't exile them to a shipwreck on an island, they have places to be. I've run a lot of one-shots in my time, but recently I've been thinking more and more often about how best to start one, because I'll be running a short adventure at Enchanticon in St. Louis this August. I've got an author table at the con, and I'm also leading a discussion on story structure in fantasy. But I am especially excited to lead a table at their game night. It's going to be a blast. So, for a short adventure like this, how do you start? Here's 2 quick tips. The hot start, beginning in the middle of the action. This requires a quick amount of exposition, keyword quick, telling the players that they've cut through the jungle canopy. The lost tomb that they've been searching for over the last few weeks is revealed before them. Its stone doors already broken open, fresh blood dripping from the rubble. Or you can start the adventure with... You're plummeting towards the earth, your airship careening to the ground in a black cloud of smoke above you, certain to crush you upon your incoming impact. If you make it to the ground, that is. Descending from within the plumes in a fiery heat, you watch as the angered phoenix tears apart one of the crewmen with its blazing talons. Then it sets its sights on... Roll for initiative. With the hot start, you're beginning with an already exciting moment, skipping all of the build-up that would have happened along the way. Maybe you tell your players about it beforehand, or maybe you surprise them. It's up to you. The other way that I would recommend starting a short adventure is essentially a cutscene, a short piece of narrative that doesn't involve the player characters, but does directly relate to the plot. Most likely, you're describing the inciting incident. Consider the opening museum scene in the Da Vinci Code, or the prologue of Aragon. You don't want to spoil anything, but perhaps use this time to foreshadow a twist. Make it quick and punchy, and make sure it establishes a sense of urgency in the players, so that when their characters hear about it, they know they have a limited time to act. Okay, wow, I know that was a long video. The script really got away from me. But if you're hoping to start a D&D campaign or just run a short adventure, I hope it was helpful. Tell me about all of your beginnings in the comments, do the like and subscribe thing, and keep an eye out for my 5-year level 1 to 20 campaign recaps. And until next time, from one DM to another, have an explosive session.